Take their seats, please. I call to order the regular meeting of the Board of Education of Community Unit School District 201, today, February 14th, 2012. Roll call, please, Ms. McMahon.
Mr. Armstrong.
Here.
Ms. Caparelli. Here. Mr. Charleston.
Here.
Mrs. Charlton.
Here.
Mrs. Hancock.
Here.
Mr. Price.
Here.
Mrs. Thomas.
Here. Could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First, happy Valentine's Day. Public comment first, and we have a card here from Mr. Bob Reed, please.
Hi, I'm Bob Reed. I live on Trowbridge in Westmont. My concerns are the one-way street that goes from Grant to Washington, which is Trowbridge. The problem that is there is that sign is not really noticeable. There's a lot of vehicles that still travel through that way all the time during the posted hours, which was 8 to 9 a.m. in the morning, which I think is pretty long, being that these kids are already in school at 8:15, and 2 to 3:30 in the afternoon, which is still kind of dragged out in the afternoon. It's a sign that you don't notice because you're looking for traffic and whatnot and see if anybody's there crossing the streets. I've gone through it and turned around in driveways that come back. I lived there. I've lived there for 35 years. It's a hard thing for me to get used to that there's a one-way street there. In the years past, the principal, I believe, used to come out and put a sign out, a barricade in the street, one way, that people wouldn't go that way. I don't, to me, if it had a lit sign that would get your attention for that time period or something, or out further in the street or bigger, I mean, it's not a big noticeable sign for that. And I know it's been a problem because the police are always stopping people coming through that stops or that one-way street. If there's anything in the school board, I don't know if that's a school board thing or if that's the village that does that.
It would be the village, and we can always approach the village and ask about the signage,
It's just not noticeable. I mean, it's an easy thing to go by. And it's a habit with me to go down that street constantly. It's hard for me to even think about it. I do, it pops in my mind, but I have to turn around people's driveway, and I don't like them. The school's always turning around in my driveway, and I don't care for that much either. So just, so if there's something we could do with that sign to make it bigger or more noticeable.
we can look into it.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments? Okay, then the next thing on the agenda is the consent agenda. Are there any comments on that? No? Okay, then the chair will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. Number 1, personnel recommendations, and 2, SACID Special Education Transportation Agreement Amendment Extension.
So moved. Second.
Roll call, please, Mrs. McMahon.
Mrs. Thomas.
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Yes.
Mrs. Hancock.
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton.
Yes.
Mr. Charleston.
Yes.
Ms. Caparelli.
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong.
Yes.
Okay, then the next item is the annual report on library programs.
Okay, good evening. I'm Nancy Battaglia, and I'm the Director of Technology for the school district. Tonight, I'm here with our library media specialists, so let me just take a moment and introduce them to you again. I have Amy Jordan from the junior high, Michelle Therese from the high school, Karen Johnson from Manning, and Rebecca Johnston from Miller. Tonight, we are here to tell and show you what vital roles our library media specialists and centers contribute to our schools. We continue to see our library and media centers develop as a hub of learning and interaction for both our students and staff. in District 201. The Library Media Center projects at Manning and Miller School will welcome our elementary students back next fall with up-to-date learning spaces. We share this information with you each year as a requirement of the school district library grant offered by the state of Illinois. We recently received our 2011 grant funds, which totaled $1,158.61. That's approximately 70 cents per child. And our library media specialists use these funds in each school to buy print materials and or online resources. Amy Jordan's going to tell you a little bit more about what our library media specialists do every day.
Good evening, and thank you, Nancy. Our goal is to prepare and meet the needs of approximately 1,600 students and all staff members every day in regards to print and technology resources. And throughout the years, the Illinois State Library School District Library Grant Program has greatly contributed to the growth of District 201's school libraries. Our professional role transcends the tradition of just checking out books, although that is one of our most favorite things to do. We strive to provide students with high-quality teaching and engaging learning experiences in order to support District 201's vision. Many initiatives that address our role as library media specialists are currently in place. For example, we are actively participating in the district's Small Giant project, which challenges us to collaborate across grade levels, subject areas, and schools. Also, a new teacher evaluation tool called the Charlotte Danielson Framework will be implemented over the next few years, and this tool expands and further defines our library goals and further supports the teacher-librarian connection. At the core of the library media specialist role is providing 21st century skills for students and staff. These include implementing software applications such as Publisher, Photoshop, PhotoStory. We encourage our students to utilize Google Apps, which allows them to create and share documents and support group projects. We also promote school-to-school communications, such as the Westmont High School students reading personal stories to the elementary schools. Guiding students through the research process in core subjects is critical in our job. You can see this at the elementary level with exciting projects such as the Hall of History, science fairs, and the Wax Museum. Students at the junior high are instructed on location and access and evaluation of research in many ways. Website evaluation is taught so students can discern credible sources and information. Students are expected to utilize our subscription databases to guide their research and navigate academic sources. Westmont High School students focus on building critical thinking and problem-solving skills they need to be productive and engaged citizens in a digitally connected world. They are asked to address and answer questions in order to analyze and synthesize information to formulate independent thought. Also, our role as designated technology facilitator for our buildings assists with everyone's needs. We budget technology needs, maintain and inventory all school equipment, and troubleshoot any issues that may arise. We also foster a love of reading by hosting book clubs, reader advisories, and author visits. For example, the author Jonathan Auxier will be visiting our elementary schools this spring. Also, much time and money has been invested in our extensive library collections, where we ensure that material supports the school curriculum. And we have dedicated many during and after school hours to professional development for our colleagues. Teachers are invited to attend workshops throughout the school year to enhance their technology skills. Topics such as blogging, Google Apps, wikis, and Google Lit trips have been offered where teachers can address their 21st century learners. We also continue to develop our own professional growth by attending conferences that address innovative technologies in our libraries and classrooms. Every year we attend the Illinois Computing Educators ICE Conference in St. Charles, where we are exposed to extensive multimedia topics and issues in education today. Some of us will also be attending the Smartboard Conference that Westmont Junior High is hosting in March. We take initiative in the community that makes District 201 so fantastic. Our established relationship with Westmont Public Library is a tremendous benefit for our students. For instance, Westmont High School students have an upcoming reading presentation called Oral Histories. Manning and Miller continue to invite the Salt Creek Ballet to their libraries every year. Our Media Center program is integrated and collaborative, connecting print, electronic, and technology resources with Common Core standards to differentiate for the diverse learning abilities of our student populations. We continue to support a scholarly environment that emphasizes information literacy skills, critical thinking, problem solving, and collaboration. We will continue to boost curiosity and imagination with our outstanding multimedia libraries, whether it be books, magazines, playaways, software, puppets, or even doll houses. Thank you, Manning. And lastly, we are proud of our libraries and the students that bring them to life every day. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is the property tax assessment appeals.
I provided the board with an update of the property tax appeals, assessment appeals that we've received to date. We have received 25 so far this year. I think that should be all that we should be receiving. It's up a little bit from last year, and there are a few large ones that we have our attorney working with us on. So any of them where the proposed assessed value and the current assessed value differ by more than $500,000, we ask for legal counsel to get involved in those. And you'll see Marriott, Jewel, I think Oakbrook Toyota, a couple of those have some significant changes in assessed valuation that they're looking for. The other ones, the assessor's office aggressively works on our behalf to get those settled and to try and reach some, a reasonable agreement with keeping school districts in mind for that. And then, of course, we've projected a decline in EAV for this tax levy, and even when we're budgeting a 99.6% collection rate, that accounts for these assessment appeals.
So, but our levy, per se, isn't tied to EAV. Now, that said, in the year of the appeal, if they win appeals, we lose money for that year, but then it just equalizes in the next year, because basically all the values are then reset, and our levy just gets spread over the
Right.
values at that point. But we lose money in the year of the appeal.
Well,
Is that the case or no?
I'm not sure, Dan.
Okay. Because at the very least, with all these commercial players in particular, to the extent that they win some of these appeals, it's pushing the tax burden away from commercial users
Right, it redistributes
and
the,
onto residential users.
correct, yeah. And-
So, in particular, you mentioned the 4 or 5. There's the apartments on Warwick, Toyota. It looks like an office building on Pasquinelli. And the Marriott ones, we should definitely have people.
Yeah, no, those have all been sent to the attorney to
Cool.
work on. And yes, that does shift the burden to the residential people in our district. So,
Do you know when we will know about these?
no, we'll get notice. We usually get notice when they come through. And again, they're working on trying to get these settled to give us our EAV.
Hearings, I think, tend to be in March or April, and then they make decisions. They go because it goes down to Springfield as well, I think, at some level, doesn't it? Because there's.
Well, a lot of, no, these they try and
this is all
settle.
DuPage. Okay, this is
These
all-
they try and settle
Here,
here.
yeah.
But I do know that they have a very large
Well, they have a right to
number.
appeal beyond.
Right, and those are P-tabs, but that isn't what these are.
Okay.
So, yeah, the P-tabs will come right off of the tax base, but these should, if everyone agrees, these come out of our EAV that we'll get at the end of March. And again, like I said, the assessors try and work hard on our behalf to get these settled in, reasonable amounts. And there are a couple on here, and I didn't make note that they're the same appeals that were done the previous year for the same amount, so their assessment didn't change. So some of these do this as a matter of course each and every year.
Yeah, well, I mean, they have real estate tax counsel on retainer, so you would expect to see it.
Anything else? The next item on the agenda is early childhood program discussion.
I've been giving this quite a bit of thought, and so I wrote some things down. About 6 years ago, our school district decided to close the school and move a building of children in less than 6 months. Many of us still have strong feelings about that decision. Moving our preschools by this fall is similar. Moving our preschoolers from Manning to a building that has been virtually vacant for 5 years in less than 6 months. The playground is in neglect, and the materials there are not handicap accessible or age appropriate. The building does not have a staff with a janitor, a nurse, a gym teacher, and a course instructor. Nor does it have a library to enrich the educational experience like they currently enjoy. There is no food service worker for the students, yet one of our preschools requires food in the curriculum. The classroom space they would move to is smaller than the rooms they currently use. The current bathrooms are not ADA compliant. The building does not have a secure front door. The building does not have a PTO to support them. The list could go on. District 201 has moved our preschools from building to building before. These previous moves were not decisions to make the preschool better or to enrich or improve the curriculum. Moving our preschools in the past, however, did not deprive our students of a single enrichment opportunity, nor did it set the bar lower. This move, if it is this fall, will make the educational experience less for this group of students. We currently have a freeze on new hires. That means these students will not get gym and course experiences like they have now. They will not have a food service worker and a library to go to, let alone get a story read to them by another adult. This move, this way, does not address the speech service needs, ELL requirements, the security needs, and gives them very little time to address it. 3, 4, and 5-year-olds with medically challenged, handicapped, and developmentally delayed students without a nurse. Members of this board have stated that they want there to be children at South School by the fall of 2012, yet they are not educators, teachers, principals, special education specialists, or superintendents. These board members that would like this move now have not articulated a single educational purpose to rush into moving our preschools. These board members have also stated the community has said clearly what they want, yet the current families that would be affected have not been asked or involved in this to date. I have not heard from the preschool parents. I have not heard the preschool parents' clear statements, and I want to. As leaders of our community, we should be trying to help our community understand why the fall of 2013 is the right time to implement this program and how it can only benefit our youngest population of students, our at-risk students. Why making the time to craft a high-quality educational opportunities is the right thing to do for all students. We should be stressing why every enrichment opportunity counts tenfold with these students. That's why the extra time is so important. That's why taking anything away is so harmful. Mrs. Clowetter, our student service director, sent the board a letter in late November. In it, she voices her concern for enrichments that would be lost if we move preschool this fall. In her words, a step backward. She refers to one of the preschool teachers who advised her to move this fall would not be in the best interests of the preschool children in our district. I did confirm with her in a separate conversation that the move of both preschools would prove to be too much isolation and no benefit for the students if we move by this fall. This kind of move won't just be a move to another building. This is not a decision for the needs of these students. It can't be, because this decision will be sacrificing these students' education for location. This move will not be a well-thought-out plan with an educational purpose. It currently has no enrichment plan, no operating revenue stream, no long-range goal. Our superintendent, Mr. Carey, also recommends moving in the fall of 2013 to do what's best for students. It means more time to get the details in place, more time to make our programs better, and time for a plan that minimally maintains our current level of enrichment. A plan to ensure the program's future without sacrificing something else in our district, and a plan that gets the community involved. All community members should be informed about this move. That's the right thing to do, especially the current parents of the preschoolers in our early childhood programs. I have not, however, seen any of the current families of our early childhood represented at the facility committee meetings. I know they have not been informed that their children might lose out on enrichment opportunities or that they would be moved by this fall. I did not see where the district has given them a chance to preview the new location, facility, and grounds. I have not seen a plan to work out any transitional needs. I know of no letter or meeting for any of these families. That's roughly 40 families, 40 parents with only 6 months' notice and no voice in the decision. I thought that was wrong 6 years ago, and it would be wrong if we did that now for any parent of our district. We should do it right, opening our preschools in the fall of 2013, as our administration recommends, and with the involvement of the affected families.
I'd like to jump in here if I can. It seems to me, I guess I want to ask a procedural question is what I want to bring up. We hold meetings, we hold committee meetings, we hold community meetings, we bring this attention to the board discusses it, the board votes on it. Now, how it gets implemented after that is not up to the board. And that's what we have here. This is what continuously slows down this board from moving forward. We made a decision, we all voted on it on the September 27th meeting that this is what we were going to do, and now all of a sudden we're reopening this topic. And to me, it just doesn't seem like that's the proper thing to do. If we had cause for concern, we should have stated it before we all voted yay at that September 27th meeting. It's all right here in the facility report. It all says that this is what we want to do, and how it happens and how it goes about, that's, to use the terms that we are more familiar with, that's more dance floor. That's not where we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be up giving direction as to what we want to do. That's what it seems to me we did, and now it seems like we want to take a big step back again and revisit topics that we've already decided to move forward on. So I don't know what we want to do about that. I think if nothing else, procedurally, somebody should say that, they want to revisit this and open the discussion by voting on it to see if we want to reopen it or not. But that's the direction this board took. So I really think that's the first part of the conversation is, are we going to revisit and change a decision that we've already made?
I would like to address that a little bit too, because again, there's a memo that we have in front of us, and on September 27th, we had Steve Cashman come to a board meeting, and he presented the recommendations of the facility committee. And we know Steve Cashman is very thorough, and he goes through everything piece by piece. And at that time, one of the short-term recommendations is to renovate and open an early childhood center in South School for the 2012-2013 school year. At that time, the board did hear all of this. There was much discussion. Our architect also provided the board with information about the cost of those projects. And that is where the amounts come from that we have been talking about as a board, the $3 million to $5 million. And one of those was the early childhood center renovation. And that talks about construction during the 2012 summer break. That, on September 27th, the board voted to authorize the superintendent to finalize the short-term facility projects as presented. And then we had to deal with a number of issues, one of which was going for the financing. And we then had numerous discussions about bonding capacity and how we were going to fund these short-term projects. And we did not hear from anybody that opposed that. And again, the money amount we've been talking about is between $3 and $5 million, all based on what was brought to the board at the time. And so I think at this point, I think what particularly Diane, I heard everything you had talked about, and one of the things that I'm concerned about is one of the directions that was given to the Facilities Committee and one of the discussions the board was having was the discussion about short-term, mid-range, and long-range plans for our district. And we have been we've been asked to focus on short-term plans. So I think the question that, again, I have to agree with Gary in the fact that this is even being brought to us because I guess the assumption is that starting from September that this was being done, that this project particularly, and all of the projects, the short-term projects, were being taken care of. Now we are getting into expanding this program. I think it's kind of a shame to kind of elaborate and talk about that these children won't get these services because as a board member, I'm hoping that we are going to be hearing from the administration as to how these services are going to be handled. And some of the things that we talk about here are, it's a shame that we have to go down this path because our community has been involved for 5 years over 2 courses of facilities committees. People have been involved. As a matter of fact, the screening for the early childhood program just went on at South School.
But they weren't
So the fact that it's been reported in the newspaper, the community has been involved. The board has never been talking yet about expanding this program or any program that we offer to our students. And the fact that it is somehow characterized as not in the best interest of the students is alarming because if you look at what we have been talking about over the past couple of years is the fact that when we talk about student-centered decisions, one of the underlying factors that the committees and the board has talked about is the severe overcrowding at Manning. And so when we talk about our children, I think it's paramount that we consider all of our children when we make these decisions. And Manning is extremely overcrowded. And the decision to more equitably use our district facilities finally allows a better learning environment for the some 450 Manning students. But I find it aghast to try to figure out how it could be characterized these students would be in not receiving benefits that they would receive, particularly in the matter of art, library, gym, because right now our 2 elementaries share those as it is. Our art teacher travels between the buildings, our music teacher, our gym teacher. So for us to say that won't happen is truly dance floor because we're assuming that the people that are running these programs will make sure that these happen equitably for all of our students. One of the comments in the report from 2009 talks about the fact that our youngest children do not have the space to do what they need to do. And so moving them to a building, once it is renovated and made safe and made whole with a upgraded playground that meets ADA requirements, will give them what they need. We are not talking, it hasn't been brought to the board yet to talk about expansion of these programs. That is clearly addressed in the mid and long range plans. So I think that the issue is not just merely moving bodies as it is referred to here. It is taking a program as it is a very well-run program right now and moving it to a facility where it can grow.
I guess I'm confused, because I didn't see anywhere in Kevin's memo for this meeting the notion of not doing the work itself, right? I mean, we're still, the question is not do the work itself or don't do the work itself in terms of the facility work. As I understand it, the question is whether or not to implement an early childhood program at South, this fall or next fall. Is that the case?
Right.
Go ahead. No, please.
Well, I was just going to, referencing the memo, number one, and you're right, it's like we have two discussions taking place in terms of an early childhood program, expanding it versus having students at South. And the first part of the memo addresses, it's a rare opportunity that a district has when it can, create a program, because typically what ends up happening is facilities drive the program rather than the program driving the facility. And so when you have an opportunity where we have South Elementary and we have an opportunity to do something with the facility and truly have our program drive the facility needs. And so, our early childhood teachers are in that process now of visiting other programs and kind of designing what that program looks like and what it can be, And so that's the first timeline that you have there, that basically rolls out kind of ideally if, to have the ideal program for us, to answer some questions, such as, are we going to co-op with other districts? Are we going to roll in the Park District to it? Right now we have a 2.5-hour student day. Well, do we still want to maintain a 2.5-hour student day, or do we want to expand that and some other types of discussions, and then exploring funding opportunities through grants and so forth? And then the following year is when you're actually doing your program development and your design phase, and then in the fall of 2013, you would be able to open up the Early Childhood Center. The other timeline you have is if we want students at South. And, the question, can it be done? Yes, it can be done. But at the same time, we don't have that time to answer those types of questions and to do that type of research. And so you would be, and also because we're still waiting on word, we still haven't gotten word on the Early Childhood Construction Grant. And so you really want to do a minimal investment into the facility, because any dollars that are spent cannot be used to defer the cost. If you remember, 10% of the cost has to be the district's cost. And so that could not go towards that 10%. So you literally are trying to do the minimal amount of investment on the district's part. And then we would have to answer some of those questions about, okay, this is the current program we have. How do we work with our personnel, or what does it look like to address the programming needs and staffing needs and transportation and those types of things? And then the spring and summer, that work would take place, and then, have students attend South. And so that ultimately is the question for the board, in terms of timeline, what are we looking at? I think it would be very difficult to, develop that kind of what we see as that vision of an early childhood program for the fall of 2013. Is it possible to put students in there for 2012? Yes, it's possible. At the same time, I don't know. I'm listening to all the comments from the board and their rationale. I don't know necessarily if that's in our best interest to do that. At the same time, though, if the board says that's the direction we want to go, then we work towards that goal and we make that happen.
So just to make sure, again, I'm just trying to understand the question being put to us. The question being put to us is not, well, sort of has a domino effect, because from the September 27th recommendations, to do the short-term projects, that included, Steve included, and I've got it open, a reference to renovate and open an early childhood center in South, but that was in conjunction with taking advantage of the Capital Development Board's early childhood grant. And then it goes on, his recommendation goes on to investigate and determine the renovation scope. And then he talks about a possible 2012-13 school, possible 2012 and 13 school year configuration. So I guess the question in my mind is, should we wait, on this early childhood question, the program question, until we've answered the first domino, even in Steve's recommendation, which is the early childhood grant? The second question is, if we're not inclined to wait for that domino to fall one way or the other, then the question becomes, do we want to move, for purposes of freeing up space at Manning, we want to move children, 2 classrooms of early childhood children into South based on plans that Steve's developing with the bond money? Or do we want to effectively sort of defer that so that we can drive an early childhood program conversation, have the program development come first, and then whether it's early childhood grant, which would be way cool because we only have to put in 10% of the cost, or whether it's our bond money, we could then fund a plan that's driven by the program. So again, that to me is the question, right? I mean, that's the question I have to address.
Right. Right. So, right, basically, and we do have an action item, after the discussion. In terms of timeline, that's the direction or the decision the board needs to make. In terms of, are we looking to, and I guess there's 3 options, I guess, if you put them on the table. One is to, try to have that expanded program for the fall of 2012. Which, even conversations with Steve Cashman, I think he would agree that would be difficult to do. The other option is a fall of 2013 early childhood center, and then fall 2012, moving our current program to South, and then, trying to replicate services as we can. And then the third option is to wait until the development of the early childhood center
Before you move the kids.
and before you move students. So those are, I guess that's the 3 options for the board to consider.
And your recommendation, based on this memo, is the last of
Right.
those, which is,
That would be mine.
develop the program, let Cashman do his work, scope, all that kind of stuff based around the program, and then move kids. Okay.
I guess I'm going to go back just before, I just want to follow up on something. The thing that I feel is disturbing is that we have been talking, the report that Steve Cashman presented to this board on September 27th talks about a number of things. One of the things that the committee talked about as well was about acting quickly. Actionable short-term items recommendation should be presented to the Board of Education in September or October of 2011, as it was, and should be completed before the start of the 2012-2013 school year. One of the things that it talks about here, and Steve Cashman talked to us about, was renovate and open an early childhood center in South School for the 2012-2013 school year and beyond. With the discussion about the additional capital project, the capital money that we applied for, it's kind of started at that time, but when we were discussing it here as a board and when we voted on it back in September, we never said that it would be contingent on us receiving this construction money, because the information that Steve Cashman gave to the board talks about what it would cost, low estimate and high estimate, to make these necessary renovations to the building for the children over the summer of 2012. So I find it extremely disturbing that we are here now talking about whether we can try to put something together for the fall of 2012 when from my stance, I thought it was pretty clear in September that that's where we were going, because we voted on, and that we were giving permission to go ahead with these programs, not expanding. Again, taking just the one piece out of this whole puzzle, so to speak, and saying this one thing can't happen. The other dominoes that come into play also talk about then at the end of, for the beginning of next school year, all we will have done is opened a brand-new district office at South School with the plans to continue talking about expanding this program and hopefully every program we do in our district. I think we do that on a day-to-day basis, hopefully. So I find it disturbing that we're even talking about these very specific expansion programs when I was hoping that we were going to get a summary of where we are to date from September to now. And if we get the construction money, that is just icing on the cake. But we went to our community for bond money based on much work that was already done. So I find it very disturbing that we're now talking about all these different projects and we can option A, B, C, and.
Well, I'm just, again, I think we need to be a little careful because, as you referenced, there's $3 to $5 million worth of projects that were proposed that the committee has recommended, and you're absolutely right. Part of the committee's recommendation as well was, we've been talking. People need to start seeing action, and we'd still be doing renovations at Manning. We'd still be doing renovations at Miller. We'd still be doing renovations at the high school, and so all those things are still happening. I think with the early childhood piece, the one of the things that has occurred since that September meeting is just the overall scope of what we're trying to do, and as people start to have conversations, and even as Steve Cashman, I'll be honest with you, media center services, that was all of a sudden it's like, ooh, what happens as far as media media center services. So I think it's kind of the overall scope of what we'd like to do with South in terms of an early childhood center. And I think there are, again, ways that you can engage the community to make it very clear that there's a definite commitment this is going forward. I think there are ways to engage the community to make sure that happens. But again, this is, I'll share with you, this is the definition of middle management because, I work for the board and I work for the district, and so there's a desire from the board, but at the same time, I also have, employees within the district and people within the district that I listen to as well. And so it's trying to balance those things, and ultimately, though, the board provides direction and, we move forward.
Can I say, I'm excited about the idea of expanding the program. I think it's great. I think it's something we should be doing. I think we should have thought about it, or should be thinking about it on a day-to-day basis. Here we are again, though, having a conversation that we've already had in a vacuum, because I think one of the things that we're forgetting is that we've got 450 kids over at Manning, some of whom have spent their entire academic experience in this bubble that is expected to pop at some point, Some of them have been in these 25, 26, 27 kids per class for 5 years, 4 years, and will be again next year, it seems. I'm not okay with that, and I feel, with the way this is being discussed, I feel like we've almost lost 6 months of planning. Even Diane, with one of the things you said was that it can't happen in 6 months. It's been a year. We voted on this in September. So by the time August rolls around, we've got a full year under our belt. I love the idea of expanding the program, and I guess my disconnect is, are we paying the architect to design an early childhood center that fits what we're doing now? Or did he design in plans of expanding the program? I mean, how has the space been designed? Because frankly, I think we can easily make a very robust, create a very, very robust program while the children are situated at South. I don't know why that can't happen, and then free up the space at Manning, which was another one of the driving factors.
Right.
So that's my disconnect.
Right, and that's, if what you're suggesting is basically one of the options, and that's you have students at South while you're designing the expanded program. I mean, that's one of the options. And again, with regards to Manning, you're absolutely right. We have some large class sizes in Manning. With the moving of the administrative offices, there's a net gain of 2 classrooms. And next year, right now it's grades 3, 4, and 5 that are the largest class sizes. Grade 5 obviously moves to the junior high. Grades 3 and 4 rotate up to grades 4 and 5, and so there would be the opportunity to have smaller class sizes at grade levels 4 and 5 for next year. If you also then move the 2 early childhood classrooms, then that's a net gain of 4 classroom spaces.
Mr. Carey, it's only a space and a half.
Or a space, well,
First Start shares with kindergarten.
right.
I guess I'll jump in for what I have to say. And basically, I wanted to start off by saying I really agree with everything you have on this list. I think this is what you would want to do. Investigate all of these things. That takes time to do. I don't view this as a presentation of we can do one or the other. I do view it as a hybrid type plan. Frankly, I probably more than anyone have mentioned my support of early childhood programming and the need to expand it, and how important it is and critical it is for our early learners from this board table. So I don't think I'm making some sort of light decision, but I think it is important that we make a decision. So I support this hybrid plan of freeing up some space at Manning, giving children at Manning larger spaces, because some of the classrooms are larger, and we move some classrooms around there so the kids have more elbow room just square footage wise, and kind of gravitate away from the older section of Manning that has the small classrooms. I also think part of what you're looking to accomplish here is to build excitement about expanding a program and to build excitement about an early childhood center in general. And I think there's a number of ways to go about that. One kind of idea that popped into my head as I was thinking about this over the past couple of days is, I know some of you know that my wife and I are big Disney fans, and we visit there frequently. Well, when they open up something new, they often do what's called a soft opening. In other words, you're there at the park one day, you're strolling by, and all of a sudden, hey, it's open. What is it? Let's go in. They go in, they ride the ride, and they come out, and they create all sorts of buzz about how exciting it was and how great it was. It also provides Disney an opportunity to find bugs, to work out kinks in their system, to see what needs to be changed before they go full tilt with something. I do the same thing at my job. If I'm approached to start a certain type of medical testing, I never just open it up to my whole community that I'm going to be hoping to serve someday. I do a targeted, study first, work out the kinks, find out where the problems are, find out where you can improve it before you actually implement it full scale. And so I view this, moving existing programming to South as kind of that step, kind of creating some buzz, kind of a soft opening. Because if you are truly looking to, at some point, have some sort of fee-for-service programs in the building, you want to have a little bit of buzz. You want to have a little bit of, you don't just want to open the doors one day and say, hey, we're open for business. You want parents to say, well, I know they're there and they're open for business, but has anyone attended there? Do you know anything about it? Oh, if we have students in the building already in existing programming, at least that's some link for community members to contact parents. Oh, somebody's daughter goes to a program there, you may want to talk to them. And they get a little bit of exposure to what the building's like, what the programming's like ahead of time, rather than just, having it empty and then all of a sudden a big opening day. I think you can do all of the things that's mentioned in here to build excitement while you have kind of a small program that's operating concurrently. I think it's important to have that foundation in place to say we are actually committed to doing this and demonstrating to our community that we are committed to it. I do believe that if we postpone to 2013, we'll be having these same conversations again, because it will be this point next year and we'll say, well, we haven't got a full commitment from our partner we thought we were going to get a commitment from, so what do? Do we just move existing program, or do we, we'll be asking those same questions again. So I think by moving the programming, it's going to give extra incentive for our district to really focus and really make it happen and really, expand if that's our true goal. And I don't think our students have to suffer at all in a move to South. I think we count on the expertise of our teaching staff, our paraprofessionals, our support, the art, the music, and the PE. They're going to do everything possible to make sure that the programming is equal or better. I have no doubt about that. And so I don't think it's a matter of students will not be receiving services. My experience with early childhood was that it was a little more self-contained. I don't really recall the students going to art class, going to music class, going to gym class. I mean, I know there's some of that does
They're
happen.
actually taught in both, and they do. They don't have art, though. They do not have art.
Most of that happens in their
No,
room.
they actually participate in they go down to Mr. Harold's office or room, and they participate in that. They go to gym
You mean
and.
music?
Yes.
Music. Okay.
And they go to the gym, and the gym teacher instructs them, and they get instruction through him as well.
Okay. And so I picture those things can easily happen at South as well, if it's planned for. And like Marie mentioned, staff is shared between buildings already. So, I think, linked in with all of this as well, I know we're talking about expanding early childhood, but I think we also have the conversation about full-day kindergarten. That came up quite a bit in the facilities discussion. And there's definitely a lot of buzz out there for parents who have kids in that age group. So, I know developing the program kind of depends a little bit on this grant. But I did, when I looked into the grant a little bit, it's $45 million, 20% of which is going to the city of Chicago, leaving about $36 million just divided between the entire state for and it's going to be awarded all or nothing. So I think it's going to be wonderful if it happens for us, but, it's a very competitive, and it's not just public schools, it's any early provider. So it could be church-based preschools, and so there's probably a lot of competition out there, which may explain why it's taking them longer than the 30 to 60 days they said that they were going to take to review it. And we also had the current Capital Development Board grant that we have now they basically told us that we had it a long time ago, from my understanding, and we just got it now. So, waiting for that, I certainly want to give it enough time, but I think we can also be planning simultaneously. And we can also hold off on doing, some major renovations. But I think, you can work with Steve Cashman to make the spaces that the current programming, because I think we're going to maintain our current programming in some shape or form, that the spaces could be designed, for those students and their needs. And early childhood, I think would vary a lot year to year just based on the types of children you have. So the programming is always changing, I would imagine, based on individual student needs and the collective needs of a group of students. So I think it's important that we move forward with this. This piece is also, linked, all the other things we're doing, the walls, the media centers, and all, they're all going to touch on academic areas. I think even just putting windows in our classrooms is going to help our students academically because it makes the environment more pleasant. But this piece is particularly tied to student achievement, in my mind, probably in a stronger way than many of the other things we're doing. And so I think it's really important that we move forward with that. We talk about that when we talk about the achievement gap between students, and we need to address that. And, starting at the very beginning is the best place, to start closing that gap. It's kind of, in some ways, it's kind of disheartening, as a parent to a special needs child, to sit at the board table here, every October and we talk about it. And I know it's just facts and I know we just lay it out there, but it just says, well, our special ed population, and our test scores, well, if that's truly the case and we're going to point to that as being an area that needs to be addressed, then we need to start addressing it. And so, I know I might be a little more passionate about it than others, but I want to see this happen. I don't want to continue to repeat conversations. And I trust that Kevin and your vision, which I very much appreciate, I think the vision you have set out for our district of being unique and finding our niche, and setting ourselves apart in the way we educate our students, I love it. I support it. And I believe you can make it happen. Even if we do, disagree on this one little piece. So I think that's important for me to say. I think I've covered everything that so I'll let somebody else comment if they like.
So I guess it's my turn. I will try and be as brief as possible. I think that there's been a lot of words that I've heard, disheartening, disgust, concern. And from my perspective, I would put all of those labels on the fact that we have both the administration as well as the teaching staff telling us there's a better way. And we are, for all intents and purposes, disregarding that because of a facilities committee and a vote that took place to move forward with a program. I think that as a small district, our teams are fairly strapped for time and everything else. The administration, if we want to say, gee, we wish you would have done this sooner, that's valid feedback to say that. But at the end of the day, they've done this, they've put together the timeline and the plan. I don't really see how this is contrary to the vote that we took in September. The vote we took was to move forward with this. The administration is now coming back and saying, in order to move forward this in the way that we think is the most effective, here's the outline. And this very small piece is adjusted slightly based on the facilities committee and the recommendations that were put forth, but those recommendations don't drive everything we do. We've not had a budget discussion about how we're funding any of these programs. Even if we didn't move these students this year, and all we did was move the administration, Kevin mentioned we have 2 new classrooms. Well, that potentially helps 4th and 5th grade. We've never had a discussion about we need to hire 2 new teachers if we're doing that. We have a staff freeze right now, hiring freeze. I mean, there's so many things besides this one little piece that are impacted by all of the efforts that were put forth in the facilities committee, but I feel a little bit like the tail's wagging the dog, like we keep going back and saying, the facilities committee, we took a vote in September, we agreed to move forward, we are moving forward. The superintendent has now come back and said this, based on all the considerations that we have in the district, this is the best plan. I'm struggling to find anywhere in that plan where that runs contrary to the direction that we've given, which is we want to move forward. We're going to be doing $3 to $5 million worth of projects, whether those 2 small classrooms move or not. We are moving forward in a huge way, and I'm all of those words, disgusted, disheartened, concerned, that our desire to have 2 classrooms in a building that, quite frankly, isn't at its best, I guess I don't understand. I don't understand how we can look at what the special services person and our administration has put forth and say that our judgment is so much better. I just really struggle with that. And I think that from my perspective, if we gave the direction to the administration to move forward with this program, he's come back to us and said, here's the plan to do that. And we can wag our finger at him and say, you should have done it quicker and we wanted it this year. But ultimately, we don't always get everything we want. We don't have the money we want. We don't have the space we want in every building. If they're advocating that this is the best thing to do for these students, I for one, do not feel like I'm in a position to argue from an educated or experienced point of view that we should do something different than that. And I'm just, when you take all the words that everyone has said, I think we should apply them to this is what our team is telling us is the best choice. And it is not dramatically different from what we asked for. And we're getting so many things. And there's so much more discussion that needs to take place about how we're funding anything anyway. It just seems a little bit narrow to stamp our hand on the table and say, we said we wanted it by X. Well, unfortunately, we don't always get exactly what we want, but we got probably the most thorough and thought-out plan that I've seen since I've been on the board. Not just facilities, let's throw some money in a building. He actually came back to us with a plan that said, make a curriculum and consider all these people and do this work and do it right and do it well and have a great impact. I just really think everybody at this table needs to think for a minute about what's really the most important thing. Is it really the most important thing to have students in a particular building? Or is it really the most important thing to listen to what the team is telling us, which is make the best program possible, whether they're in building A, building B, building C, building D. It doesn't matter what building they're in. Our job is to educate every child to the best of our ability. And we are not sitting at this board table necessarily the best people to make the dance floor decisions. Keep talking about that, and no one even knows what that is except us. The administration, we gave them board level direction that said, we want this. The dance floor has come back. The day-to-day operations have come back and said, for us to do a good job, this is what we need. And now we're going back to them and saying, too bad. Yeah, so that's.
I feel absolutely compelled to just read the recommendation I voted yes for. The recommendation reads as follows. Taking advantage of the Capital Development Board's Early Childhood Grant Program, up to $5 million grant with 10% matching. Work with the board, administration, teachers, and community to create an early childhood center in South School. The next section, Section A, under that number 2, under South,
I'm sorry, Dan?
starts with the word investigate.
You're not reading the final report. The final report says to create some type of early childhood center in South School for the 12.
I'm reading the first sentence. Taking advantage of the Capital Development Board's Early Childhood Grant Program.
Right.
Work with, to create, right? And then this section is all investigate.
Right, but you skipped the sentence.
What?
This sentence right here.
Yeah, well, no, I hadn't read it yet. I was
It's
going to
before
get there. Okay, yeah, I mean, it was clearly to
make sure.
create, yeah, no, I understand.
Well, if you're going to read the paragraph.
Acknowledging,
Okay.
you know, it was to create an early childhood center, premised on taking advantage of, to create, yes, and then investigate. So the next one, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, actually next 4 points, start with the word investigate. Fifth one is update existing electrical. The next point B starts with possible 2012. So just to be about what I voted for, just to say out loud what I voted for, I voted for this. I didn't vote for affirmative. Just, you know, and if you guys voted, you know, with a different understanding, that's fine. But I voted for the recommendation that was on the page. So with that said, I also have a memo that says that my superintendent doesn't believe it to be a student-centered decision to relocate 2 classrooms and then develop the program. But, so, that's all I got to say.
I will add one more piece to that, and kind of to just address a couple of Shannon's comments. The board is here for a particular reason, and I know Marie has talked about this particular line, how we bring the values of the communities, our community, the priorities of our community, and the direction our community wants to go to the decision-making process. And that's our role here. And sometimes, and we have seen this in the past, the majority of the board doesn't agree with the recommendation of the superintendent. It happens. It has happened to this board, at least the board that I've been sitting on. And, you know, it happens from time to time. That doesn't mean, you know, we don't support our superintendent. That just means we feel the community is telling us to go in a different direction.
I need to add, though, Joel, to that the community that we're talking about is the community that was part of the facility committee. Because this is the time frame that we're talking, because we're doing it, you're suggesting we do it this fall, the families that it affects were not involved in the facility committee. And they will be a little blindsided.
Well, you know, I don't know if I want to call it blindsided. They'll be, I'm sure we'll do everything possible to notify, to make any sort of transition, you know, easy. You know, again, that gets down to the nitty-gritty details that I don't really direct. But
You know,
I'm sure our staff is very, very capable of doing that.
I wanted to address a couple things. Diane, you're talking about that our community will be blindsided. Well, there's been article after article after article in the newspaper that
No, Marie,
talks about
just the early childhood.
early childhood renovation at the cost of $1.4 million. So I don't think that's
I'm only speaking of the families that are currently involved in the early childhood program.
And
that would be moved. That's the
Right.
only ones I'm speaking of.
Right, and when you say blindsided, what I'm saying is that this board has had all of our meetings are televised. There's been numerous huge articles in the paper about this. Anybody in the community had access to be on the committees. So, you know, I understand that that's your opinion, but I think, in my opinion, is that I think blindsided is a strong word when everything we've done has been in the open. Nobody has been turned away from any of these facility meetings. Everybody has had an opportunity to attend these meetings.
Marie, I'll just add to what you're saying there. Also, we were waiting for the financing piece before we start. You know, I mean, we really were waiting for the bond capacity to sell bonds was all kind of wrapped up and official and ready to go before we start saying this is definitely going to happen, it's not going to happen. I mean, all of our projects were conceptual, really, until we actually had a funding source for them. So, you know, one might have been premature to start sending letters out to parents telling them that something's going to happen when it, you know, without money, it wouldn't happen. So,
I would like to also, I'm hearing some talk about what we talked about, and, anyone who has sat through a presentation by Steve Cashman, he's very, very thorough. One of the things that the facility, and again, I'll say one thing. Yes, the facility committee makes recommendations to the Board of Education. And then the Board of Education makes decisions, and they don't necessarily have to agree with every recommendation that's brought to us. However, what we talked about at length on that day, one of the things that is referenced in here is that equity across schools. Whenever facility modifications or improvements are planned, the district should work to provide equity between buildings so all children receive similar educational experiences. And I go to, there's another thing, a committee assumption that Manning will not be replaced and will be renovated and expanded to meet the current and future educational needs. And I think I'd like to refer to something that Mary Kay said, is that we have many children who have their whole educational experience so far has been in an overcrowded building and room where the rest of the students in our population at the other elementary buildings or the junior high and high school do not experience. And so to say that we are not doing something that is in the best interest of our students is not accurate, because we have to look at all of our students. And this report talks about that. It doesn't, it specifically, in addition to talking about just 2 classrooms for these bubble, one thing that Steve Cashman talks about, and he talks about at length, is to create dedicated space for service providers. And he talks about all future renovations and additions should be designed to provide flexibility for future changes in education curriculum space use. That's what we have been talking about all along. That's what we're saying. We're not talking about just waiting to get 2 classrooms for this bubble of class. That is part of what it is that has been talked about. I wasn't on the facility committee. I know some board members were, and I know, members of our community were, but it wasn't just that wasn't just the only piece. There's a whole piece that talks about the educational experience of all of our students. And I will again refer to the report that says renovate and open early childhood center in South School. And the end of that sentence says, for the 2012-2013 school year and beyond. And I think that one of the other premises is that these should be completed before the beginning of the 2012 school year. I think our community has said to us very clearly that we have been talking. We have been talking a long time about this. And yes, I think these plans are fantastic, and I can't wait to hear about more. But if we just keep telling our community, we're going to talk about this some more, I don't think we are doing what we are supposed to do. And I just have to clarify one last thing. There was a reference to a letter that the board received. That letter from Ms. Kleweter, I thank you for, talks when there was discussion about moving just one class, not both classes.
I actually called her and asked her to clarify that for me, and she said both classrooms. She thought that's why I put that in there. She felt it would be isolation for both classrooms to be put into that building without more consideration.
I'm just trying to clarify what the board has in front of us, whatever, that's what the board has.
Well, I know, but I interpreted it differently. That's why I asked for clarification.
Okay, but I'm just trying to state that, so.
I'm sorry, Gary.
I just wanted to add one thing, something that Joel said that I think is very important to say, that at least personally for me, I do believe in Kevin's vision and Kevin's optimism for our district very much. It's just that we're just not agreeing on a basic timeline here is all. But I do know when you're out and about in the community and he's speaking in the community, you can see he's very well received. I definitely want to see his vision come true here in 201. It's just that this timeline that's where we're having a little issue right here, that's all.
So a couple things I wanted to say. I think Kevin addressed the overcrowding question and clarified that two of the grade levels next year in the Manning building potentially still have this enrollment bubble, and that we would potentially make space available. So I really just wanted to say again, and regardless of the additional comments, I think Kevin was very succinct about clarifying the space that could be made available to deal for those two grade levels so that there would be an improved environment. Now, of course, we still have never discussed how we're going to staff that, but that's a completely different problem altogether that isn't even on the table. The other thing I'd like to say is I find it interesting that as we've gone along the last several comments here that people are picking out individual sentences and little pieces from the facility committee meeting to suit sort of whatever their argument is. So I figure I'll jump on that bandwagon also because one of the committee assumptions says quite clearly, recommendations driven by educators. Committee recommendations should be analyzed and evaluated by the district educators to make sure they support and enhance the learning environment. We have 2 written documents from people that fall into that category that have analyzed and evaluated the recommendations and are saying, yes, we can do them. Again, I'm still a little confused about why we think we're undoing some vote we took before, because we're not. But yes, we can do them, and here's what it would take to do them well, and to bring forth a program that we can be proud of and want to make an effort. I just want to clarify that, as we pick out little sentences here and there, really at the end of the day, it's a facilities committee. They did not have the benefit of any of the information that Kevin or the Director of Student Services has provided us at the time that they sat down and had discussion about facilities. These were not program discussions, these were facilities discussions. They were told, do not consider finance or money in any way. This is your pie in the sky. If you could have whatever you wanted, write it down and then prioritize it by timeline, and this is what we come out with. It's still just a facilities recommendation, and I don't want to take away from the work and effort that was put in because it was tremendous, and we did have a lot of involvement by the community and a variety of people. But at the end of the day, it's just a facilities recommendation. It doesn't address other things that are involved in putting a comprehensive plan or program or move or anything together and implementing it. So that's my little selection out of the facilities committee meeting that I think speaks to what we should really seriously be considering. I don't advocate in any way that we don't do this. I think we do it bigger and better and than we do most things. My experience, which is more limited than Joel's on the board, has been that when the administration comes and gives us a recommendation that's well thought out and documented and there's a plan, that we take heed of that and consider it very seriously. And that's what I am advocating that we do in this case.
As just a pure question, so if there are 2 early childhood classrooms there, they would be there starting in the fall of 12. They would be there theoretically through end of May, first week of June in 13, right?
Well, early childhood, there is some flexibility that you can have with the early childhood year.
So it just begs the question, just to ask it out loud, and I know Steve is going to present next month. Would love to have him address the question, if there are 2 classrooms there, and then you design a more robust sort of early childhood program, and then there's attendant, sort of construction work that needs to happen, just be sure to have him address the question whether or not, he thinks, a 60 to 90 day time frame, is something that he can do for a full opening in fall of 13. It's purely just, can you do it, kind of question. So,
Dan, that brings up a good point. We actually had a tour, 2 board members and Steve Cashman and our administrators. We walked around South School, and Steve Cashman made it very clear that building is, with very minimal work, can be ready for students of this program. He talked about. You asked the question, and I'm sure, yes, he's going to come back with more plans. But he actually talked about that walls can be moved and that can be done
Understood.
So,
Yeah, I mean, I've
just
walked
sharing my-
that building a number of times with Steve as well. You know, I was on the 18-month effort
Mm-hmm.
in 2008 and 9, so I'm intimately familiar with it. So, yeah, and it's just, I think, just as a practical, sort of technical matter, it's worth revisiting.
And it's still just a facilities recommendation.
Yeah, I mean, it's just.
At the end of the day, it's not the whole picture. It's one piece of what we're trying to accomplish as a district. And we maybe are finally going to do one thing with an appropriate timeline and well thought out and planned and inclusive of all the people that need to be involved. And now we're suggesting, well, no, let's not do that in this case because we hoped it would be sooner. I don't know. I just think that that takes some thought, really, again.
The timeline?
Yeah. I mean, I want lots of things too, but, I try to listen to what people are saying and I try and find valid, rational, student-centered pieces to take away from each of those. And the most valid, rational, student-centered argument is the one that Kevin wrote down on a piece of paper and sent us in our board book. That's the place that I'm finding what to me seems to make the most sense. All decisions are hard. All decisions have pros and cons either way that you go. There's no perfect answer for us here, and there won't be in almost anything that we do. So I just want to, say again, to just really look at the facts as they're presented and not think about what happened, 6 months ago or last year or 5 years ago. Not think about only facilities, not think about only one building. We have a lot of things we're trying to do and a lot of people to serve and a lot of buildings to focus on. And again, here we are spending, a lot of time and energy on one tiny little piece of what we voted for in September and, the effort we're trying to accomplish.
I think that brings up a very good point. I think that absolutely brings up a very good point because I'm kind of surprised that we are doing this as well because I did think that the board had much discussion and this was already decided on.
And
But
I
guess-
agree,
but
Marie, I don't think what we're discussing is contrary to what we already voted on. I guess that's my point. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I think that what we agreed upon in substance and practice is still, we said we want to move forward. Now, the administration is coming back to us and saying and I didn't count them, so I'm sorry if I don't have the exact number right, but of the dozen things that you wanted to do, and it could be 10 or 15, I'm not sure, but of that list of things on the short-term list, here's sort of where we stand. We can do this and this and this, and here's the plan for this. And there's some other things on the short-term list that haven't been touched or discussed that were part of the recommendations. So I feel like we're just taking this one thing and saying, we voted on it, we have to do it. And it's, well, if you look at the whole list of things, there's some other stuff that hasn't happened right away or that isn't quite on the timeline that we initially envisioned, which speaks directly to, do we have balance and attendance in the buildings and how are we dealing with that? And have we looked at redistricting and grade level centers and all these other options? That was also part of the short-term recommendations written in that document that said, we voted to say, go forth and investigate, go forth and, find out what needs to be found out and tell us more. And so just suggesting that this is the only thing and somehow we're going against it, I don't think we are. We voted to move forward with these things. Now we're at step 2. They're coming back and saying, moving forward looks like this if we do it the best way possible.
I need to address a couple things on there, Shannon. You talked about that the facilities is just about the facilities, and I would say that it's not just about the facilities. The facility committee didn't just talk about buildings. They talked about what is in the best interest of the students. So it's not just about structures. It's about how do we use our facilities for our students, not just buildings.
Sure,
and
absolutely.
So that is the driving discussion here about that.
And
so
I
it's
agree
not
with you.
Just building.
I completely agree with you,
Okay.
but the facility is about the physical plant.
Right.
The facilities committee didn't spend time talking about funding and financing. They didn't spend time talking about
Correct.
development of programs and curriculum and staffing.
Right.
Those weren't part of that discussion because that's not the place for that.
So
This
what
is the place for that,
Right.
where we have to holistically take what each of those small committees brings us and try and match it into the bigger plan of what we want to accomplish as a district. I don't mean to suggest we that we're the maintenance department where we're just looking at, do we
Right.
need a new roof? But at the end of the day, facilities is just a slice.
Right.
And while we may consider student needs, it's not the money and the staffing and the curriculum. Those things are not part of the facility committee session. So I just didn't want to
Right.
mischaracterize my statement.
And I just want to state that when we, going to a couple of different things, the reason that I spent a whole day at a seminar talking about why there isn't just a superintendent or educators running the districts. There are boards elected. Every 2 years is another election, and the boards bring the values of the community to the table. That's why we're here. That's why 7 of us are here right now. So I would hope that our relationship with our superintendent is that we can have discussions and we can disagree from time to time. I think that certainly came up last year when we talked about budget cuts. But the thing that I feel that it goes back to the very first thing that was said, we had this long discussion. We had all of these meetings, the facilities committee, then we had Steve Cashman do a thorough presentation to us, and with the documents that were in front of us, and the motion was to authorize the superintendent to finalize short-term facility projects as presented. So what I'm saying now is I feel, I guess, the word dance floor, I feel like we're being dragged onto the dance floor now, because now we're hearing, well, we had this discussion, and I thought it was a really good discussion, and we talked about all these things, and we were presented with amounts of money to do these things. We didn't say, well, we can only do them if we go and get these grants. Getting the grant came in later. But
Well, actually, it did say it on the facility.
Let me finish.
Right, but it did say it on the facilities
yes.
committee recommendation.
I understand.
That grant was specifically
understand.
written there.
Let me finish.
I just
But
wanted to clarify, because that's how I read it. It's specifically there in black and
Right.
white.
And again, what Steve Cashman brought to us was the amount of money that it would take to do the renovations. And those renovations were between $3 and $5 million. That's what we talked about. And so we, as a board, listened to that. And we listened we hear things all the time from our community. Those are the values that we need to bring to this table when we make decisions, which is why there isn't just educators running the district. We have a valid place here. And so
I guess I don't understand, and maybe you can explain to me. Let me ask you my question related to that.
I need to finish.
Is tell me how
I will.
How our values are being compromised by allowing the administration to go forward with the plan they've outlined. That's what I want to understand.
I will.
Because I don't hear it so far. I'm not hearing how our desire, our values are compromised. And Marie, that's what I would truly like to understand.
I will. I would like to finish first. So what I'm saying is that we have these board meetings where where everybody is watching, they're listening, things are out on the website. We're having all of these discussions. We have all of these people that have spent their time and effort to come to us and give us, through the facilities committee, their recommendations. We sit and we listen to it. We had a lot of questions, and then we had a motion to go forward with that. What I'm saying is that at this point now, 5 months later, I cannot sit here now and say, I am not going to go for what we said we were going to do then. I truly hope that the other items on there, such as the high school and the Miller recommendations and plans and all of those things are still happening. But what has been brought to us now is a piece that I cannot now tell our community that we went for bond money for $3 to $5 million to accomplish these short-term projects. I cannot now go to our community and say, well, you know what? We really aren't doing that over the summer. We're gonna still talk some more. And that's what I struggle with, because we are supposed to, we have these meetings, we are talking about these things over and over and over, and we keep saying these are the projects that we are talking about. We were not at that time talking about all of the programs. That is where we truly, as a board, say to our our superintendent and our educators, we give you the vision, or we give you the direction to go and finalize these short-term projects, facility projects, to help our students learn in the best way they can. We are not supposed to figure out how that gets done. That is what we have these people to do for us. And so in September, when we said, go and do that, and then we went to the community for the bond money, nobody objected. So what I'm saying is, I know from where I feel, I cannot sit here now and say, I will now go back to the community and say, well, we kind of didn't really mean all of those projects. We only mean some of those projects, because now we're going to talk further about expanding the program. I love what is here that has been brought to us, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the short-range plans, not expanding the program.
But where in here does it say we're not doing this project? I guess I'm still confused about how this runs contrary to our efforts. Our efforts were to develop an early childhood center. It was a facilities statement, right, is to develop an early childhood center, develop that facility to accommodate that need. I don't understand how what's being proposed runs contrary to the value or to the commitment that we've made. Additionally, just I think it's a little bit dangerous to say nobody would object to the bond offer. I mean, the fact that a petition wasn't filed means there weren't enough signatures at the time the deadline hit. But I think that it's a little bit of a mischaracterization to say that there weren't people that had concerns. There were questions that came into a variety of people about what is this and what's going on, and is this really the right thing? The other thing is, we've had more than one discussion about projects. One of them was the discussion where we said to Kevin, hey, we need more concrete information from Mr. Cashman to understand where is this dollar amount going, because $3 to $5 million is a range. It was a ballpark. Here's a facilities committee recommendation. Here's a ballpark. And we said, all right, let's move forward with the short term. Now, Mr. Cashman, we need real numbers and real information so that we can validate and make sure that we have the right amount of money and that it's going to things we think it should be going to. That was all part of discussions that have taken place. It hasn't been just one. But I really want to go back to the administration came to us with a timeline that is outside of what our initial desire or request was for one small component of this work. And they came to us with a rational, thought out, reasonable, that doesn't say, hey, we're not going to do it and talk about it anymore. I'm sorry, Marie, but I want to say that I don't think that characterization is accurate. He said, here's the plan. We're going to create a curriculum, and we're going to try and sort out the funding sources, and we're going to do these things. And this is the amount of time with the people that we have available that it takes to do those. I don't think that that's saying we're still discussing whether we're doing it or not. Nowhere in the recommendation does it say this continues to be up for discussion of whether we're moving forward. What we were provided by the administration was, here is the plan to do it in the best way possible, and this is the timeline associated with that plan. So I don't want to be disagreeable, but I feel like some of the things that are being said are a little bit of a mischaracterization of what we've been asked for. We were presented information, and we're being asked to determine whether that's a reasonable, rational approach to this, because when we started, we said, this is our goal. Now we're getting feedback. I'm just, again, all those words we like to use, disgusted, disheartened, concerned, whatever those words are. I'm those things that we want to plow ahead, regardless of some very well thought out rational roadblocks that have been presented to us via this written document from all of the people from the staff side, administrators, educators, whomever. I don't think it compromises our values. I guess I just need to say that. I just disagree. I don't think we're changing our decision from September. I don't think it compromises any commitments or anything that we've made to the community. The building is going to have administration in it within the timeline, which means the building is being repurposed back to being a 201 building, not leased out and not utilized for something outside of our needs. We have an excellent opportunity to do something well and do it right. I guess that's just, it's all about opinion at the table. I don't necessarily disagree with the things that you said. I just think some of the way things are characterized in that statement aren't necessarily the broadest interpretation. I think they're more specific. And
And again, there,
have to agree to
we
disagree then.
we have the board collectively, or at least by a majority, has disagreed with recommendations that have come before.
But we're talking
And
about
so-
this one now.
Yeah, we're talking about
not
this one now,
before.
but you're saying, you're talking as if this never has happened before. It has happened before. They came
I'm talking
last
about
year.
now. I'm not talking about any
Well, I
other
know
time.
it's nice to talk about now that you want to agree with the superintendent and the business manager and what was brought here, and I think that's fine. But, they have brought other things to us, including budget cuts last year that totaled, I think, like $400,000, and the board said, go back and change that.
And that was
They brought
only the administration, though. That wasn't the collective people responsible for a set of students. That was from a budgetary perspective. It was strictly financial, and it was only from.
Paint it any way you want, it still is
I'm
a
not painting it.
recommendation.
I'm
It's
just
a
clarifying
recommendation
the
that
statement.
came.
We need to have one.
I'm sorry.
Okay,
One-
we're
one-
doing okay.
No.
It's a recommendation.
Joel and I are talking.
It's a
I think we're
recommendation
doing
that
fine.
came,
I'm
and we
sorry, this is a
disagreed, and we
board table.
changed it. That's basically all I'm saying.
A
Is it-
conversation between two board members. I think we need to move forward and
I
look at these
agree.
timelines and agree what we're going to do timeline-wise. I think we've all made our points. I think we all know where our opinions basically lie. Let's just decide again what we want to do with this timeline. Do we want to approve the first timeline? Do we want to approve the second timeline? Do we want to approve both timelines? I don't know if that's the proper way to phrase it, but I think it's time that we, again, make a decision and move forward instead of just keep going back and forth and back and forth.
I think that what we're talking about here truly seems to hinge on when students occupy the school. Do I get that? So I think then we should have two, whether the early childhood program as outlined here on the first page up through top of the second page, with fall of 2012, fall of 2013, opening of the Early Childhood Center. So we have two plans in front of us for all practical purposes. Am I correct? Does that seem to be what everybody sees?
Well, I guess my question would be is I'd want to make sure that, again, that we're giving clear direction
Right.
to our administration. And I think if we only vote on the one, it's kind of telling them that, are we really directing them then to still do the other one?
Maybe
Okay.
to clarify it, I think Joe used the term hybrid. I think that was Joe's term,
Fine.
and perhaps to make it clean, the motion should be to approve a hybrid timeline, which would mean to investigate the expanded early childhood program for fall of 2013, and then the placement of students, early childhood students for fall of 2012. I think that's what you mean, Joe, by your hybrid?
Yeah, now we say early childhood, we're talking about early childhood and First Start?
Right.
Okay.
Yes, the entire programs, right? That's-
Okay, so the motion then would be, that sounds right. So the hybrid would be to investigate these pieces that are in front of us, but incorporating.
How about the chair will entertain a motion to approve the timeline for Early Childhood Center, including investigating expanded programming and the relocation of early childhood students for the fall of 2012. Something like that.
You have the word investigate in there.
Well, that's investigate the expansion of the programs.
The goal is to have an expanded program by 2013 with the children situated at South in the current program in 2012. Is that correct? Is that the hybrid?
That's the hybrid.
what Joe refers
to as a
hybrid, right?
So
Are we all clear on what, because there's
approve the
no way I'm
hybrid
going to
plan?
be able
Just
to.
to be, and to be clear, it's a goal, there's work to be done, and, it's a commitment, but it's not, if the administration, just, from my vantage point, if I vote for yes, if I were to vote yes for a goal, 2013, it wouldn't be with the direction that, come heck or high water, it's got to happen. It's truly administration-based.
The expansion component?
The expansion component,
Right.
yeah.
Thank you.
So are we clear on the motion? Then, please, the chair will entertain a motion to approve the hybrid timeline for the Early Childhood Center, including investigation of expanding the program as what is presented to us, continuing to investigate expanding the early childhood program, but having First Start and early childhood programs moving into the South School for this beginning of the school year 2012. Did I capture it?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please. Mrs. McCann?
Mr. Price.
Yes.
Mrs. Hancock.
No.
Mrs. Charlton.
Yes.
Mr. Charleston.
No.
He said no, Judy.
No. I said no. I'm sorry.
You said no.
I said no. Yes. I said no. Let me try that again.
No.
Correct. I said no.
Ms. Caparelli.
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong.
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas.
No.
Then the motion carries.
I do have some questions, now that's carried.
I'm sorry?
I have some questions for Mr. Carey now that it's carried. When, I guess this first question is for Mrs. Anderson, the bond money that we approved going out for, when will we have cash in hand? Rough estimate.
Well, I'm not going to do the issue until we know how much we want to issue for, because if you recall, we did the resolution for up to $5 million. So I still don't have direction as to how much we want to issue for. And some of that was waiting for Mr. Cashman to come back and give us more firm numbers. And then also we were, kind of waiting to see what was happening if we would get some of that funding for the early childhood construction grant, because that might allow us to move in and do some other midterm projects or things like that. That would be a decision for the board to decide, do you want to issue all $5 million and hopefully have, some extra monies to do, some of the next range of projects, or later I've got our, just some other capital improvements that I've given you, and we'll discuss those later, but the dollar amount of those projects exceeds the remaining money that we have left, and we have continuing, just facility update needs that we need to do in general that we won't have additional funds for. So that's what we're waiting for. And so as soon as I talked with Liz Hennessy today about we're going to put together a kind of a tentative timeline, but we'll do that soon after we have firmer numbers from Steve Cashman next
So
month.
would we have it before the beginning of next school year?
Oh, yeah, and we don't have to have the money really until we get the first bill. So I don't have to have the money in hand months before we start construction.
And really,
So-
we don't want to, because from
Right.
the time you have money in hand, you have a fixed amount of time in which you have to spend it. So it's to our benefit to go for that money as late as absolutely the last minute possible, to give us as much time as possible to utilize it for whatever our projects are.
Right, and it's not like if I had it in hand that I'd be earning all this great interest on
Oh,
it,
no.
so.
Well, there's negative carry on
Right.
holding cash. There's what's
Right.
called negative carry because we're paying interest as
Right.
soon as it's funded.
Yep.
And that interest is going to be substantially more than the interest we can earn.
The interest rates, because remember Liz talking about the interest rates being very low, that is continuing.
And they're
Types of
continuing,
bonds.
they're fluctuating a few basis points above above that. They're shifting kind of daily. Actually, when she priced that on, I think it was January 25th, that was at a 45-year low, and they've bumped up just a little bit since then. But that kind of
To
fluctuate.
give you an idea, the 10-year Treasury at the point that she priced it, was in sort of the 1.85 to 1.75 range. Today, that 10-year Treasury is about 2%. Munis is a space that I touch, and so munis, have sort of moved, all spreads, because there's some good economic news tends to create, wider interest rates. So some of those spreads have moved out. It's not 50 basis points, it's 10 or 15 basis points. So instead of being 2.3%, it might be 2.4% or 2.45% or something like that.
Yeah, I guess my only concern was if we continue to wait, are we going to see that trend continue? And I certainly don't know, but it's just,
Well, I mean, we can go ahead with it. I just need to know, because I thought the direction in the resolution was up to 5 million, and we were waiting to get firmer numbers.
Well, I said it before, given the recommendations from the Facilities Committee and the estimates we have, I think we could probably manage to improve our buildings to the tune of $5 million. I would be fine with that. I don't know why we're waiting, really, but,
I'm not inclined to fund anything more than we have to because it costs money to carry money. It absolutely costs money to carry money, and it will burn into your operating budget.
Can I say, can we please get back on topic?
Yeah, that's all.
absolutely.
And that brings up a point. Kim, we're meeting, we have a meeting, a special board meeting on March 13th, where Steve Cashman is going to present for the further solid numbers to us. Would that be the time to firm up this money?
I think we could certainly have the discussion. I'm not sure I would do the resolution at that board meeting. I would probably wait until.
The one after that? Okay. So can we ask then to make sure that Steve Cashman knows about tonight's discussion?
Yeah.
About,
Yeah.
what we just talked about for next year? Okay.
I still have 2 questions.
Okay, Diane, I'm sorry, but
It is regarding what we just did, though, Gary, so I was
Okay, but is it-
curious
it's
as to
not-
how we're going to do it
Okay, well-
after this.
okay, it's just that if it's not board questions, that's the whole point of why we drag on and on and on and on and on forever.
Gary, let her ask a
Okay,
question.
go ahead.
That's why we're here, right?
The parents that
Hold
this
on,
affects, how soon can we, especially the parents that have transitional issues with their children, if, I guess I know I'm putting you on the spot, how quickly can we try to get them notified and informed as to this decision?
That's something I'd want to sit down with Linda Cloudwater and also the teachers in the program and have some discussions with them, and then we can, flesh out that timeline a little bit better for the board and that communication piece.
And then the operating budget is going to be affected by this as well. When will we have a rough time frame as to when we'll know what that impact might be?
I would guess, typically, March is when we have staffing discussions and we start talking about those types of things. So I'd imagine, next month we'll have a better idea of what we're looking at staffing-wise and those types of things.
That was it.
So the next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report.
Just a couple items. First, facility plan, we've been talking about that a little bit, and Kim and I do have a meeting with Steve Cashman tomorrow morning, and so definitely we'll share with him conversations that we had this evening. And he continues to meet with staff within the district, and that's how he does his design and development and ultimately gets to those harder numbers. And he's well aware of the March 13th board meeting, and that the desire of the board is to get something a little bit more concrete, and so that's his goal as well. The one question I did have for Steve, we had a meeting last week, just to make sure from our end that he knows that everything needs to be completed by the fall 2012, and so because you start to get a little nervous, we're still planning, developing, and he assured us that yes, our time frame is fine. We'll be on target for that. So he understands that. With regards to strategic planning, we had a meeting last week on Thursday. All the work of the committees was put into a template so that it looks uniformed, and then committee members came back, took a look at the template, and what you have in your board book is the template prior to the work of the committee. And so the committee did make some revisions, and so those will be changed in the template. That will be shared with the board. What I would recommend us how to proceed with the strategic plan, similar to a board policy, we'll do a first reading that will have all the edits and changes, so the board has an opportunity to look at it, ask questions, and those types of things. And then we'd have a second reading and approval. So there will be an opportunity for the board to discuss and make sure that it all makes sense and flows with everything that we're doing as a district. And then with regards to the Building and Grounds Committee, they met, as the board is aware, we have in addition to our short range, medium range, and long range, we have capital development projects as well. And so because that work also we want to have take place over the summer, we brought the committee together to take a look at proposed projects for next year. Mike Mayoros also provided with us some additional projects, partly because of the age of buildings and need. And a couple of things that we're doing with regards to this. Number one, because we're going out to bid on other projects, Steve Cashman gave us some input on which projects he would recommend going out to alternative bid as well, so that the board would have an opportunity to accept those bids on those projects that are related to capital development or to reject those bids. And then the Building and Grounds Committee also asked Kim and Mike to take a look at the list of projects and prioritize. And so the second column on the left, that's what those 1s and 2s and 3s, 1 being the most urgent that we'd like to accomplish, and then 2 and 3 and 4 and so on. So as we get closer to dollar amounts and additional information, when the board looks at those projects, they'll have an idea administratively how those are prioritized.
Yeah, and one of the things that I just wanted, we had very good discussions in our committee about the projects. Your packet, though, unfortunately, when I was putting things together, because of the way the spreadsheet's set up, I had to hide some rows to be able to print successive pages, and unfortunately I printed the first grouping, the things for this year, with those hidden rows. So, and Shannon did a very thorough review. The dollar amount is correct on there at the $1.905 million, but you're missing about 4 or 5 items in the detailed list. So I'll send out tomorrow another copy with those missing items. But if we just go through some things, and the other thing too, I want to let everyone know, Mike Mayoros and I are working with CDAC, which is an organization that helped us get the $10,000 of grant money that we used to put toward the junior high windows. And so we're working with them again to see if there are some of the projects on here that we may be able to try and get some additional grant funds for. So we're hoping that that they'll be able to get out in the next month or so to do some building studies with us to look at some of that. So especially at the high school, maybe boilers and some things like that. So we've identified some projects, and again, most of those are dependent upon energy usage. So they're looking at things where we can save energy costs, and those might be things that would apply. So when we're looking at, and we did identify some things, we've got a little bit of life safety money in there. So I went ahead and identified some of those, and the notes, and there are notes on there, but the very first item, the boiler repairs and replacements, that one could be done. And then about toward the bottom of that page, the entrance doors at the high school, those are things that could potentially be done with life safety funds. We don't have enough money in life safety to do those completely, but we could certainly expend the rest of our life safety dollars and do those projects. The ADA renovations, and again, that we're going to do, those boiler replacements do as an alternate bid. So we'll make final recommendations on these after we get the bids back. And we figured that was the most prudent way to go and analyze how we're spending our money. The limited ADA restroom renovations, we're going to wait. The student will not need those for next school year. But we do need to kind of set aside some money to make sure we have funds available to do them potentially in the subsequent year. Roof repairs for all buildings, we continue to need to do that and set aside $25,000 for those projects. Again, the mansard roof repairs, priority 2, the parking lot at the junior high, that needs to be done, but we're going to look at that and wait to do that with a bigger project so that we hopefully get a better cost on that. And we also have, parking.
Because the Miller parking lot's
Miller-
next year,
yes.
so you may as well, if you're going to do them together.
Well, and then, but that is the whole domino effect, because the Miller parking lot, if we're going to do additions onto that building or things like that,
Yeah.
that will impact the footprint of the parking lot. There's also considerable storm drainage issues and things like that. Had a conversation with Steve Cashman. He's not sure what the full scope of that would be. That's going to have to be conversations with the city and things like that about what exactly, and maybe potentially the county, what that's going to entail and what that cost might be. Those types of projects typically are very costly. So again, trying to make sure we spend our money wisely and don't do things that may be negatively impacted by future renovations. Again, yes, we know Miller parking lot is in bad shape, but we need to address the drainage issues, and we need to understand where we're going in terms of renovation, so we don't spend $400,000 or $300,000 on a new parking lot only to rip it up a couple years later if we did additions.
Kim, can I ask a quick question on that? And I think I know the answer to this already, but as we're talking about parking lots, obviously right behind Manning and District, there's that, and that is owned by the village.
Yes.
So, when you're talking about trying to, I can appreciate trying to not do things separately. Is there any way of touching base with the village and talking about coordinating things such as parking lots? Because, again, whatever the footprint of the building ultimately looks like, but that space back there is pretty bad. I mean, is there any way of having conversations with other entities about trying to, join in, and maybe there's a street repair that's going to be done and we could coordinate with that?
I mean, to get better pricing on a parking lot that we were going to do, or?
Well, you're talking about not doing things in just, trying to plan out, not just take care of it. Because the Miller parking lot is bad, Manning parking lot is bad as well. That area, is there, I guess what I'm trying to say is.
Well, I'm not following, because the parking lot by Manning, that's the village, they would have to repair and redo that. We wouldn't have any part of that. But if you're talking about trying to get a better price, if we did one of our parking lots in conjunction with them doing other asphalt work for the city, I'm not sure. I mean, there would have, again, we'd have to have the funds to be able to do the project, and then what type of intergovernmental agreement we may need.
You're
to
talking
do
about
with
the
it.
parking lot that comes out to Cass? Is that the one you're talking about?
Right behind the building.
Oh.
Between the parking lot, that's really bad, and
Okay.
that whole.
Like right by the door and
Right by the door
stairs
and all
all
of
that kind
that,
of
and
stuff, okay.
To be clear, that's Manning's, but were you referring
just did that
to?
last-
Yes.
Were you referring
That
to
was
the
actually-
public parking lot?
No, not the public parking lot, that initial
That
front
small one, yeah.
area where
We did
people
that
come
last year,
on.
though.
Yeah, we just resurfaced, we just seal coated that this past summer. But the alley is very bad, and that's the village.
The alley at one time, the village talked about resurfacing, but they've never come through on it. That was like 4 or 5 years ago, they were going to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Just a quick question along the lines of what Maria was asking. Did SACID offer any, because they had in the past reached out to member districts to try and coordinate like this type of stuff? Was that, did they?
They did. It was more like the seal coating,
Okay.
not the, and that's a good idea and a good utilization of resources to try and get better numbers, which we did get better numbers last year. In some of these projects, though, again, we might want a little bit more control.
Okay.
So, all right, so the next item, the concrete entrance deck at Manning, again, priority one. We're going to get a quote to see about some repairs. So we'll look at that. Again, we want to be cognizant and make sure that we're not doing anything that may be touched in a future renovation. So have had conversations with Steve Cashman regarding this. We talked about, you see the line rope anchors for the pool, and anything dealing with the pool is a priority 3 or 4. We are going to bring another discussion to the board about the swimming pool and the repairs and things like that that need maintenance that needs to be done there. So that's really for another time. Replace concrete entrance walks at South. Again, we were looking at that, waiting to see what happened with that EC grant, and again, potentially item that could be incorporated and use that grant money if we get that. Science tables, when we invest, we have a dollar price of $20,000 for the science tables at the junior high. When we investigated that more and asked whether we could just maybe resurface them or whatever, when we got down to the real issue is that they'd really like new science labs, and that cost is significantly different than $20,000. So like shorter tables, kind of redesign thing, that's probably several $100,000. So that's why that went to a priority 3. And then the pool basin, we're experiencing lots of paint chips, and so we drain the pool each year. We could wait and drain the pool every 3 years if we didn't have all the paint chips in there. The way to remedy that is to do the sandblasting and the aggregate skim coat at a cost of $164,000. That's why we're having a bigger pool discussion. Or do a sandblast and just another coat of paint, and that's about $50,000. But we're going to wait and drain the pool one more year until we have a bigger discussion on the pool. The Liebert air conditioning and humidity control condensing unit for the tech room, we're recommending that. That's at the high school, and we need that to protect our technology equipment.
Speaking, just as a tangent, just for a moment, in terms of air conditioning and the elementary buildings, is the air conditioning that we've talked about for the elementary buildings within the scope of what Steve recommended in the immediate stuff, or where is that?
Do you recall?
I think it's in the scope of Steve's.
Because, that's for both elementary buildings. They need that. It's important that they have that. So, I want to make sure that it falls into someone's scope for this summer.
I think it's on the short term.
Yeah, it's on, I remember looking at the same thing.
Good.
I remember looking at the same thing.
Okay. And then the special light entrance doors and frames at the high school. Again, we're going to do that as an alternate bid, and that would be one of those things that might qualify for an energy grant. The carpet extractor, we're recommending doing that out of the O&M budget. We've got some contingency money in there. Enclose the home ec and food service classrooms, waiting for that, again, as a part of a bigger discussion on next phases of the high school. Food service van, we're reviewing that later to see if we can maybe reuse the box on a new truck, and again, potential purchase out of O&M. The leak check and roof repair, rooftop unit repairs, looking at that priority 1 for the high school. Definitely going to do repairs. We're going to have a mechanical engineer come out and look at those, and depending upon what that recommendation is, may or may not be added into our bid package.
That's for the junior high, actually.
That's for the junior high, yeah. Okay. And then, hang on. Because that's one where you're missing now the next page. So what you don't have in front of you is at Manning, there's some metal cap and some flashing around the north addition parapet wall. And Tuck Point, the north addition parapet wall, there's bad mortar joints, and we have leaking. That's about $37,000, and the committee did recommend that we move forward with that project.
The north parapet, so that's the new section, right?
Correct, the 1966 newest section.
New, yeah, exactly. Sorry about that.
Okay, and then again at Manning, we have an EPDM roof over the gym locker room. The rubber's failing, and we have a cost in there of $75,000. And this is a replacement cost. We need to address this within 1 to 2 years. We're having a roof study done, so we'll have some updates on these pieces, and we'll come back again, and we may re-rank these and decide what we want to do. Then at Manning, also a backup natural gas generator for the sanitary ejector and sump pumps. When we have a power loss there, sewage comes close to backing up, and we can't use a battery backup because of the 3-phase motor. So the tech server is located in the basement there, so that's a concern. So that is an item that we're going to do as an alternate bid, and that projected cost is $20,000.
Do we have a generator there now? Do we have a generator attached there now? No generator at all?
Absolutely not. We can't use a battery backup because it's 3-phase electric on it. That's not available, so that doesn't use electric service.
Right. And then the fire department recommends the natural gas now, don't they?
Well, anything over diesel fuel would be our only other option on there. That would require us to have a tank on site. So
Yeah, right.
It really is the only feasible way for us, the most practical way for us to address that issue.
Okay, and then...
Kim, can I just ask, these last two things, where are they on the priority?
They're priority ones.
These are all priority ones? Okay.
Yeah. And then the next item is a priority 1, and that's disconnect and reroute the old steam service line to the gym, which is under the stage handlers. That's at Manning. We're going to add that to the scope of the current renovation, and right now estimated cost of $20,000, but really probably may just get done in the whole scheme of things without a true additional cost. Next item is a priority 3, new vent line for sanitary waste in the lower level girls' washroom at South. Projected cost of $10,000. Again, we had put that wait for the EC grant, and to also do a more extensive renovation of the restrooms there. Parking lot repairs, at Miller Junior High and the high school of $55,000. That's a priority 1. We recommend those. We need to do some type of repairs, especially at Miller, if we're not doing replacements. So again, we're getting some estimates on that. And then what you do have on your sheet is the wireless internet access at the high school and the junior high school, and that's $66,000. We're going to put that in as an alternate bid and evaluate it. Again, we did put this as a priority 2, but it's one of the things when we're talking about the way we want to teach students and the fact that we don't have wireless access there, really trying to struggle with what our priority is educationally.
Absolutely.
So we'll look and see what that bid comes back as, scope of projects, and then we all have to come back and make some hard decisions when those numbers come in. So the total of those things is $1.9 million. Total capital projects is $1.33 million. Life safety totaled $520,000 and $51,000 coming out of O&M. And so we don't have enough money left to do $1.9 million. So we're going to have to, we've got about $1.4 million roughly between what's left in our working cash and the life safety. So again, this is kind of it. That money's gone. So any future things, we need another funding source. I did present you with projects, that were on the list from last year for the 2013-14 budget. And again, that had the Miller parking lot repairs in it. It had a placeholder for roof repairs, some drywall repairs, concrete repairs at the gym entrance at the junior high, and then lunch tables for Miller. And obviously, we didn't prioritize these items because there were things currently that we won't even be able to do. And then there is a projected list for the 14-15 budget Again, roof repairs at all the buildings. Look at the roof on South. That's going to need to be replaced at some point. That is an estimated cost of $125,000 and not included in Steve Cashman's estimates. And then replace domestic hot water boiler at the junior high. Again, this would be something that we would have CDAC look at when they do our reviews to see if we might be able to get some grant money for that. And then we've got repair and seal coat the high school parking lot, but some of that may be done this year. And cabinets for band storage, and then an irrigation, some irrigation stuff at the high school. And then I also included for you, we had asked if, we did decide to issue all $5 million or had money left from whatever dollar amount we decide to issue for this series of bonds, what would be midterm projects that we might be able to identify and do with any remaining bond money. And so those are included for you. And the priority one really was the mechanicals at Manning School, plumbing and heating, classroom lighting and electrical service improvements. And then priority two, all the other schools are listed, and there's several projects that we could look at addressing there.
The priority one stuff for Manning, is there an opportunity, again, for the energy savings to maybe get a little grant money towards either of those?
Potentially might.
Yeah, and that we're, I don't know how many buildings CDAC will come in and do, if they'll do all of them. So we're going to start with the high school. I think we determined that was the priority building, and then go from there and maybe submit those requests one a month or something like that, so that and kind of see. I've talked with the gentleman and see if maybe they can do all of our buildings while they're out here or whatever. Okay. Does anybody have any other questions or?
Just that on that page that you were just talking about, it says oldest infrastructure problem should be addressed first, electrical, steam, and then it kind of cuts off. What,
Water?
did it say water?
Yeah, water. Sorry.
Okay,
Yep.
I kind of assumed that, but,
Okay.
so we would be talking about the priority one as a possibility when we talk about the bond money.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
And do we have estimates for these? Were they pulled off another list or something?
No, we don't have
Okay.
estimates for
Okay.
all of this. Do
We
you?
have some earlier estimates on
Yeah.
the previous architect had given us on their.
Oh, okay.
Depending on the scope of what we look at on there,
Mm-hmm.
probably it's changed a little bit on there, but we had some room.
And we would identify those and then go out, I mean, first a bid, that would probably be stuff that would be done next summer anyway. I wouldn't envision that in the scope of this summer's work.
So the summer 2013, okay.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Certainly not tonight, but when we get to the funding questions on all this, and especially the timing of the funding questions, it costs money to carry money. So for instance, if some of this stuff doesn't get funded for a year and a half, or even 2 years, or 2 years, say, as an example, to carry $1 million for 2 years, even if you pay 2.5%, if you earn a half, that means you pay 2% on $1 million a year. For 2 years, it's $40,000 to hold that money. So looking at the negative ARB as opposed to just timing the issuances, I think becomes important for you and Liz and stuff like that.
And the other thing we have to consider too is the cost of issuance. So
No, I know.
those
But
fixed costs.
Depends on
what-
how the negative ARB eats into the
Right.
COIs.
Okay.
That's-
And then, so we're done with that?
Yeah.
Did you didn't want to do anything else on that? Okay, then the next thing, board reports. Is there anything?
I just want to say that, the Manning PTO did a great job the other night, the fun fair. There was lots of people there, families volunteered. Seemed like a great event. I don't know, I think the whole school showed up, so it was a great time. Well done.
I have to agree, and a big thanks to all the volunteers because they definitely cover the whole spectrum of the entire district. So it was a great event.
A huge congratulations to our regional champion girls basketball team, who twice this year lost to Lyle in our gym, but to win the regional championship, beat Lyle in their gym, this past Saturday night. So there's nothing quite so satisfying as to do that. As well, the boys this year have won their I-8 tournament, and so their seeding for regionals is really quite attractive. And regionals are being hosted at Westmont High School starting next Monday. The boys will be playing next Monday night as well. So the girls unfortunately lost their sectional battle against a really solid team, but this was last night. I can't even begin to tell you. It was a physical game, but our girls, they played hard. They never retaliated. Their sportsmanship was unquestioned. They lost to a really talented team by 5 points, and they were up by 6 at the half. That was just, we have some seniors on that team who are graduating this year who are just fantastic. They exemplify and embody the word connected by a hyphen, student athlete, because as it turns out, the starters and the seniors on that team, they are fantastic students as well. Super fans were out in force all those games. The student body was huge. Just a really exciting time right now at the high school for several things. So, but congratulations to to the high school girls and the high school boys, and good luck, boys.
And then just one more thing, coming up in the first weekend in March is the high school musical, and that is How to Succeed in Business Without Trying. So I know there'll be tickets will start to go on sale very soon for that. And Joel, help me out here. I know in the middle of March is the junior high. This is the year that the junior high
Music
has
Man.
the music man, yes. That's in the middle of March. So thank you. Those are always very well. Very nice to see how junior high and high school students can really shine in the arts and that in those endeavors. So, anything else? Are there any public comments? Okay, then the chair will entertain a motion to enter closed session for the purpose of discussing collective bargaining issues and personnel items.
So moved.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Hancock?
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yes.
Mr. Charleston?
Yes.
Ms. Caparelli?
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
And there will not be a vote after closed session.